It's no secret that in today's society, raising kids, we put more pressure on moms to be the caregiver that everyone can rely on. And according to data from CNBC, it revealed that 53% of households view mom as the primary caregiver. Of the 500 parents who were surveyed in this survey, less than a third agreed that raising kids was a split and equal responsibility. Juggling childcare challenges versus work responsibilities can take a toll. There were approximately 35 million working moms in the United States by the end of 2019, and a total of 9.8 million working moms are suffering from workplace and life burnout. According to analysis by Great Places to Work and healthcare startup Maven, Michelle DeKeyser is a wife, a mom of 3 kids, who participated in various moms groups. She even ran a few. However, this mom was longing for something more. So she set out on a mission, particularly after COVID. DeKeyser says that in today's society, we are so disconnected that we need to take some time to reconnect with not only ourselves, but those around us. So she set to work to create a mother support group called Connecting Mamas, which allows mothers from all stages of parenthood to come together, share resources, and get connected. DeKeyser joined me this week to tell me more about the group and how she's fiercely committed to ensuring that mothers all around the world rediscover their individualism while also being a great mother as well, with passion being the leading force behind the effort for both. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. Michelle, if you're ready, I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program this morning. I'm delighted to meet you and talk to you this morning all about reconnecting. Great to see you, and thanks so very much for being here.
I'm so excited to be here, Kevin. Thanks for having me on the show. I love talking about connection.
Absolutely. And Michelle, you will say for us as a human race and humankind that we're severely disconnected, and we need to spend some time reconnecting with ourselves, but also with the people around us. So I'm wondering if we can start our conversation by just chatting about why you think it's important for us to reconnect with ourselves and others as well.
I think COVID really just made it apparent how disconnected we are, but I think it actually stems back even further than that. I mean, if you think about back in the days, we used to live in villages and we used to just as a community help each other and support each other without even thinking about it. Now it's like if you need help or something, it's like you have to go outside of yourself to ask for that help. And so it's just, we've changed this in ourselves, even though our innate ability, we want that belonging. We want that village style. We crave that. And so it's hard to make that connection between where we are and where we are today and to be able to rectify that without feeling that those feelings of we don't belong. And those keep reoccurring in us. And so now we need to figure out how do we maneuver around where we were to where we are, but still feel that sense of belonging and genuine connection with each other.
Yeah, and to that end, I know that you've created a framework called Check-In, which is based on forming connections through joy and life. So I'm wondering if you could tell me all about it.
Sure, I'd love to. So yes, so Check-In is my own framework, and so it is about checking in with yourself and others. So that first C is curiosity. We really have to start somewhere along the lines. You have a 3-year-old who asks 100 questions a day. By age 11, they're not asking any questions at all. Somewhere we lose that sense of curiosity, and that's how we start to get that connection back. Is not so much in our busyness, but looking at what do we enjoy doing, asking ourselves that question and putting that intent behind what we want to do and looking around. So that first one is that curiosity of starting that process. Then we get into the H, which is honesty. Then we actually have to ask ourselves, well, what are our values? Be honest with ourselves. What do we believe in? And then we keep applying the curiosity to that honesty. And then we go into expectations for the E, where we're looking at what do we actually expect? I mean, we'd love to just say we can release all our expectations, but until we acknowledge what we're expecting from ourselves and from others, we can't do that. So if we don't acknowledge them, then they kind of sit in the back of our heads, and we let our subconscious make us feel disappointed because we're not acknowledging these expectations. Then as we move into this, the next C is actually connection. So our second C is connection, and we kind of connect all these pieces together. How do we connect with ourselves? How do we connect with the people and the people around us? And so we work with the connection process, and we do that through baby steps. But again, we're asking those questions. What to connect with yourself, you're trying to figure out what you like and what your interests are. And then when you start connecting with others, like we've been talking about, that you are feeling that disconnection. So then you want to now take baby steps into that. So what I always suggest is the first thing is like when you're in the store or you're seeing another mom or whoever you're seeing, and you have those thoughts in your head that like you want to give someone a compliment, or just these things pop into your head, rather than keeping them to yourself. So we start that process of making connections with others and talking about them. And then the K is for keep listening, because a lot of times we're so busy interrupting each other and telling each other what we think they should do rather than letting them figure out for themselves, or having those uncomfortable silences where people actually do get that chance to figure out what they want, especially with our kids. And then the last two almost go together, which is intentional now, and is being intentional with your time and how you're doing it, and putting that now in by making a choice to schedule yourself into your schedule, not just your kids or the people around you, but to schedule yourself into that time.
Yeah, absolutely. And Michelle, I'm gonna share just a little bit about myself. So I was born with what's called spastic quadriplegia cerebral palsy. Simply means that I don't have enough oxygen in my legs to walk normally, and I view this podcast as a way and as an extension to build social capital and belonging with people like yourselves and the other people I have had a chance to interview. So I'm curious how you look at building social capital and really building emotional courage, and how those two are interconnected.
First of all, your story is amazing and beautiful, and I'm just so excited to be here with you and connect with you. Secondly, I think it is with those baby steps, and I think, which is why when I run my program, I purposely have it virtual to start, because I think we need to start, because we've been so disconnected, that if we just jump in, I mean, we see these groups on Facebook, or we'll see these pictures like, oh, they have these best friends. Why don't I have this? Why don't I have that? And we have those feelings of wanting that, even though we need to work up to that. We've been so conditioned into who we are that we can't just say, okay, I'm snap out of it and do it. So we want those baby steps. So virtual, I think connections are a great way to start, to open up and to figure out who you are and to express that, because you really can't connect with other people if you don't share who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. And Michelle, tell me, when you think of the word fulfillment, what comes to mind for you, and how do you feel fulfilled personally in life?
When I think of the word fulfillment, I think the first word that actually pops into my head is the word I took from Martha Beck, is going towards your North Star. And so the way she explains it is that you have this home, that all these things that you've wanted and everything that you want, you put this in this home space, but you're not going to get to until you actually define who you are. And so it starts with those nudges, listening to your gut, where actually I was just listening to the podcast one from Jamie Kern-Lima, who created a beauty empire without having anything to do with it, had no idea what beauty was, but her gut kept nudging to her. Same thing with me is I kept thinking, well, what do I want to do? What do I want to do with myself? And I had to keep listening to those nudges. So I decided, well, you know what? I love connecting people. I want to help bring that out. And so as we keep listening to those nudges inside and working towards them, it's not easy, but that's when you feel the fulfillment, is when you're not feeling, when you know you're working towards what you feel those nudges inside of you telling you.
Yeah, absolutely. And Michelle, I'm wondering if you can detail for me your own journey of sort of reconnecting with yourself outside of your kids and really coming back to your inner center. So how did you reconnect with yourself personally?
Well, personally, I felt like I was living in a fog, and I felt like I loved my kids, I loved my family, but I just felt like I wasn't quite partaking in all of it. Like I was there doing the things, but I wasn't necessarily enjoying it, or I wasn't like feeling as I was part of it. And so ironically, it was during COVID, the September 1st of 2020, we decided that we finally came to the conclusion that we're going to homeschool our kids, at least for the year, because of health issues with some family members. And on that same day, I decided to start the 75 Hard. And so it was this personal journey, development journey for me with doing the 75 Hard plus homeschooling my kids, that really opened my eyes to putting time in for myself and doing things while still managing their homeschooling and stuff, that really I started to unpack and really started to journal and meditate and do these things where I could discover what I wanted. And I think that's what really started for me. And so I've been on this journey since then, but it feels like I was teaching before I had kids and I stayed at home, and it wasn't necessarily something that I want to continue doing. So it's trying to figure out, what did I actually want to contribute and how do I feel fulfilled doing it? And I know that I want to help people. I know I like connecting people. And so trying to put all that together has been a struggle, but that's where I feel the fulfillment comes from and where my journey has come from.
Yeah, and I know part of that journey now is helping moms find their own passion, because you think it's important for moms to connect with themselves outside of your kids. So tell me about helping moms find their own individual passion.
What I found with moms, and I found with myself, is as soon as you have that child, you start making decisions and you don't even necessarily realize it. So for instance, you might decide, okay, well, I can't go out with my friends tonight, even though I want to, or I need to do this. And you start saying no to a lot of things, and you start making these decisions either consciously or mostly unconsciously. And before you know it, you just have become a different person and didn't even realize why or what happened. And so that's where I kind of got. And all of a sudden now my kids were at the point where there'd be pockets of time, like you have 15 minutes. And then I'd find myself playing Candy Crush, or that's where I started before that I did the 75 Hard. And I'd feel lost, not knowing where my time went or what I wanted to do with my time. And so for me, it was helping moms who feel that same way. Like we start to get these pockets. We start to have this shift in our perspective. I mean, it's also part of our age too, is where we've done the things. We've done the school. We've done the, we got to the point where we're married. We have the kids. We're at this point, but the question is, now what? Where do we go from here? Do we want something else? What do we want to do? And so that's what I want moms who feel that way and want something more. I want to bring them together to help them figure that out, because it's not that easy process, but it becomes easier when we talk about it together in a structured way. Yeah,
absolutely. Discovering your passion also helps moms really come to their family life in a more present fashion. Would you agree with that, if moms discover their own individual passions?
Well, I totally agree with that, because when you really think about it, what you want your kids to be happy, healthy adults. And the way they're going to do that is by seeing that model. And so if you're not modeling it for it, you're saying one thing to them and doing another, that what they really see is your actions. Your words, blah, 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 after a while, but who they see you becoming and what you're striving to do, that's what really impacts them. And for instance, with my son, I always use him first. We used to have a really my first reaction to him was always, whenever we had a conversation, was just to yell back. And he's very similar in my personality, that I would throw my hands up in the air and tell my husband, you deal with him. You deal with me so you can deal with him. And walk away. And I, as a mom, didn't want to feel that way anymore. I wanted to be able to relate to him. And ironically, I never would have expected becoming an entrepreneur or even going through with what I wanted to do would bring us closer, but it inspired him to want to work with cooking and maybe teaching kids how to cook, and just the connections we had, more genuine, and things we want to do together, because I was going after what I wanted, and he saw that drive and wanted to collaborate with that and become part of that, and the connection. And even my middle daughter all of a sudden was like, what can I do to help you with my business? What can I do to help you with your business? But just the connections, I kept thinking would take more time away from my family. But instead it brought more connections that I would never have thought possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And Michelle, I know that the role of education was big in your life. I know that you've spent up to 8 years in the field before having children. So I'm wondering your thoughts on the role education played in your life and how it's really evolved in educating today's kids as well.
I think education has been a really big part. I mean, I was in school for so long, getting my master's, and I went to teaching elementary and high school as well. And what I've seen, especially, is one of the reasons why I personally wanted to homeschool but didn't work out in my family, was I was seeing what the kids really need to know today is how to manage their thinking, how to evolve that, which we don't necessarily teach at school. I mean, all the personal development and the positive thinking and all that stuff is starting to trickle into the school. And I think that that's more important. I mean, the way we did learn with facts and all that is almost obsolete, because they have all that at their fingertips. I mean, they don't necessarily, they need to know how to look things up, there's so much information out there. Now it's more about, how do we synthesize that? How do we put that together, and how do we know what we think is true and not true, and how to put that all together? And that's the skills I really think we need to be working on teaching our kids, because everything is just at their fingertips. They can find any piece of information that they want. They need to know the basics, but they need to know how to use that information and how to put it together and structure their own opinions from it, and not go off of everyone else's opinions.
Yeah, absolutely. Michelle, I always say that everyone's portrait of success is different, and the only level of expectations you have to reach are your own, because it's my belief, if you don't have a fundamental, personal level of expectations, it's hard to rise up to anybody else's. So tell me about the importance of defining your own version of success.
Well, that's where it comes down to, because I mean, a lot of us will say, oh, I want the big mansion, but when you ask yourself the question, do you actually want that? And you might not. You might think you want fame, or you might want that, until you actually ask yourself, you see other people do, and that might not be actually what you do want. So you need to spend that time asking yourself, what kind of person do I want to be? What for 5 years right now, what would I want that to look like? So when you put that picture in your mind, then you have something to work towards. But if you just say, if you're not going to put the effort into picturing that, which is something I've been really struggling and working with as well at the moment, that's where it comes down to, because you need something to work towards. And it's once you make that picture of who you want to be in 5 years from now, you start making your decisions based on that. So this person, what would they decide to do, or how would they present themselves? And then you're not questioning so much your actions, you're working towards being that person, and you're that person before you know it.
Yeah, absolutely. And just building on that point, how do you think we can achieve more clarity in that picture of success?
I think it's simply, we need to sit down and actually put time into it, or start with that curiosity and asking yourself, what do I really want? And start taking note of it and taking the time. But you don't necessarily need to always sit down. It's putting that intention behind it, because when you're taking the walk or you're doing something else, these thoughts might come to you, because now you put your subconscious looking for it, and you need to take note of those and start putting that together. And again, our society wants everything now, right? Like, we want everything done today. But this is probably something that's going to be a little bit more of a, let's let it kind of define itself, but we need to be vigilant and look for it, and really put our mind to work for us as we're doing that, and take note of of ideas that pop up. Have that notebook with you, have your phone out when that idea pops into you, so you can just write it down. And as you start piecing that all together, then you're going to have that picture you really want. We got to get rid of some of that busyness as we've tried to find that. And we've been so busy, it's hard to listen to the quiet and figure out what we want.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Michelle, I'm going to tell you that I am 34 now. My birthday was just in January. And, looking at the world today, and this is one of the reasons I wanted to start my podcast, and I started it 2.5 years ago during COVID, because I looked at the world and I said that there's more that is working to divide us than bring us together. So I wanted to create this podcast and platform to build more bridges of sort of unity and inclusion. So when you look at the world today, raising kids isn't what it used to be, even when I was growing up. So tell me about how raising kids today has really shifted and changed.
Well, I think part of it, I think it's having the technology right at their fingertips. I mean, like, I don't even think I had a cell phone until I was in college. So it's having everything right then and there, having everything and having to monitor that and how they think. I mean, because when we give them too much technology and they're always on that, that will affect them as well. But it's more so, how do we teach them to use it for them and not against them? Because, I mean, everything, once it's recorded, it's there, it's in the database. And so it's just a different game out there, and teaching them how to be responsible for it. And then, but in that mind, it's still essentially the same thing. It comes down to the question of them wanting to be who they are when no one else is around. It really comes down to that. I mean, that's lifelong, is that you want them to have that impression, and it doesn't matter, because you're not going to be with them 24/7. And so it's always coming down to teaching them that they want to be the person who they believe in, who see who they want to be, and teaching them those values of who they are and where they want to be. And I don't think that's ever changed. I think we have different means of doing it now, and they have more things in their faces these days, but essentially it comes down to that core value of truly being who you are when no one is watching, and being happy with that person.
And being present. Yeah, so tell me about being present as parents, and what do you think it means in today's society?
I think it means that we do put the phones down, that when we're with our kids, that we're giving them our attention. Again, they're watching us. So we start having those habits when, as soon as they get their phones, like, well, my mom's on my phone, then I can do it, right? And so when we're being present with them, we're trying to actually engage with them and do things with them. And I like to say, like, especially as you're getting that curiosity out and figuring out what you want to do, is you don't have to do everything with your kids. Like, for instance, I always say I'm not the biggest Lego person, so I don't really play Legos with them. But I do like to draw with my daughter, or other things I do like to do with her. Those are the activities that I try to engage with and make sure that I'm present with, and knowing that I'm giving her that time. And we don't have to engage in everything, but when we do enjoy something with them, those are the things that we really should use to be present with them and create that genuine connection with them.
Absolutely. And Michelle, I'm also curious, because I know that you use social media to really connect with people and really build that sense of community. So tell me about the importance of building community on social media, and why you think it's such an effective tool to accomplish that goal.
It's funny you asked that question, because I actually have conflicting feelings with that. Right now, I've been working at this moment in time on really revamping my blog, so I actually haven't put as much emphasis in the social media, because I really feel that we need to do what we're good at. And for me, it's getting the writing out there and the connection, and speaking is where I find that my powerhouse is. And so I know that I was more consistent when I was with the blog, and then putting the social media with that. And so what it is finding your powerhouse and what you feel comfortable with to create that community. Because what you're trying to do is attract the right people to you. So what I'm trying to do is attract the right moms to me, because I want, like I said, as I would say, moms who have that feeling they want more and they're not sure how to go about doing it. That's the type that I want to attract. So what we're doing is we're using social media in those realms to get, to attract that. And building the community is essential. And so honestly, right now, my community is starting in Slack, actually, trying to get a little bit off the social media aspect, because we do go down those rabbit holes when we're on social media. And so the community aspect, though, of being able to connect and communicate with each other is so vital and important, and deciding how you want to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And Michelle, I asked you earlier about being present as a parent, but I also want to tie it back to gaining your individualism. You know, as mothers especially, we feel guilty sometimes if we're not pouring all of our energy into our kids, but it's also important to find our own individualism, isn't it? So that we can recharge and get energy to deal with our kids in all aspects of life, right?
Right. And I mean, I look at the thought process of who I was before. Like I said, when I was there with my kids in the room, but I'm sitting there playing Candy Crush or doing something that's on my phone or something else, is, for me, I ask myself, is that really being present with them? And so if I'm not going to have the time to be present with them, would that time be used better to be growing something? So everything has a cost, right? No matter what decision you make, has costs and benefits to it. So you have to decide, where does that come into play? Are you becoming the person you want to meet? I mean, if you say you need date nights with your spouse, right? That still is a cost of not being with your kids at night. So you need to make those decisions along the way. And part of that, though, is when you do recharge and pull out that time to figure out who you are and what you want and spend some time in it, then when your kids want to go play that board game or do something, then you're actually more present with them. So you want to look at not necessarily the amount of time, but the quality of time that you're having with your kids, and making those decisions based on that aspect of, am I giving, if I go on a date night with my spouse, is that a good decision? Are we getting quality time out of this? When I do these things with my kids, am I getting quality time, or is it just feels like another thing I have to do? And I want to get more to those things that we enjoy doing with the people around us to make that connection.
Yeah, absolutely. And Michelle, how do you define inclusion and acceptance for all people? How do you define the words inclusion and acceptance?
Well, I think it comes down, for me, is including everyone, but acceptance, it's accepting who you are and that person. And also, though, knowing that just because someone doesn't like you or anything like that doesn't mean that it's, when you are who yourself and you're shining out the light of who you are, then you start attracting the right people to you. And so then you're including those people into your system. And again, it's not necessarily, it's when people are different or have differences of opinions, it's listening to them and not saying that they're wrong, but just saying, okay, I agree, disagree with you. I'm going to let you share your piece. And we don't have to be angry about it, that's their opinion. We're not trying to change everybody, but just being in acceptance to each other and listening to each other and say, okay, that's great, and learn from it. And even if you never know, just because someone has the opposite opinion of you doesn't mean you can't learn something from them by hearing it. And that's what I think acceptance really comes down to, is being willing to listen to each other without saying that I'm against you because of it. And I think it's hearing each other out and realizing that we're all people. We all want to be loved. We all want to belong. We may not be best friends with each other, but that doesn't mean that I need to hate you or be upset with you. It means that I'm willing to listen to who you are.
Yeah, well, and we can use that and adopt it in all aspects and areas of life, couldn't we?
Yes. I mean, it comes down to, when people aren't getting along, it's why aren't we getting along? And it's mostly because we're refusing to acknowledge that we're all human. We all have our opinions, that we can listen to each other. And essentially, we all want to be loved, and we all deserve to be loved. And that's our human innate beings, and belong to people. And we might not belong to everybody, but it doesn't mean that we have to treat people with disrespect and not be willing to listen to who they are.
Absolutely. And Michelle, what do you think it means to be resilient as a parent?
what it means to be resilient is I can actually take this morning as an example. I was telling you before we start recording, just like when everything starts to go wrong. So my son didn't get his work done last night. He's trying to get his homework done. I said I'd take him to school this morning, and I realized that as I said that, we're have to leave the door, and my complete car is covered with ice. And I drive him up the street, just with the head out the window, and then I come back to see his math homework is all over the table, and my girls haven't started eating breakfast. And I yelled at my daughter, and she's like, "Just please hurt." And so the resilient part is taking that deep breath, going to go hug my daughter and tell her, I'm so sorry that I yelled. I shouldn't have yelled. I took my frustration at you, and admitting that, and starting the day over and trying to work set. I got them eating, and then I ran to drop my son's folder off at school. But I think it's acknowledging our mistakes. So we're not human, we're not perfect, but that we pick ourselves back up, we take that deep breath, and what can we do to take accountability for our actions, and then work to fix the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you work with mothers, I'm fascinated to ask you about sort of the turning point where they sort of take ownership of their lives and realize that they can strike a healthy balance between being a great person and a great parent as well. I'm fascinated to get your perspective when they receive sort of their aha moment when they work with you.
I think the aha moment comes for moms, especially, is that community aspect. Is because when they realize that they don't have to do everything alone. And I feel moms have felt for so long they don't know how to ask or where to get that support or how to do that. And so I think the community aspect really gives you that aha when you start to be able to figure out, this is who I am. No one here is saying that I'm a horrible person because of who I am, because we were always so worried about people pleasing or saying that we need to do these things or who we are. But it's all of a sudden when you start to say, this is who I am, and people around me are okay with that. And then you go forward with that. You get that courage, that confidence to do that further out. And then now in your daily life. And I think that's where the turning point is when people start when moms or anyone starts to accept who they are and know that there are people out there who are going to like me for who I am rather than trying to be someone else. And that's really where the turning point happens. And once you make that shift, your kids almost start to see it. I mean, my kids have said all kinds of stuff from me having my own shift. But it's really coming back especially for moms, to be that role model, to model for them. It really doesn't matter what you say. You can say anything till you're blue in the face, but I mean, I've had so many conversations with my kids about their teachers and how their teachers, we use the word hypocrisy, but what they say doesn't match what they do. And I think that's the same as true as parents, is we can tell them that this is what they should do, but if we're not modeling them, they could care less. And I think that's really what it comes down to, is making that shift in finding out what you want to do, going after it, and modeling that for your kids.
Yeah, absolutely. And Michelle, for you, what's the best part about being a mom?
The best part is honestly the smiles, and just like even today, even when things went awry, knowing that I was able to get his homework to him, so he'll be probably, I'm hoping to get a thank you when he gets home, but even if I don't, it's just knowing that I'm there modeling for them, seeing who they're becoming and trying to inspire and giving them opportunities to try things. But if they don't like it, like for instance, I do Taekwondo with Liam and Lily, the oldest and youngest. Bella used to do it, but then she found a love for swimming. So then we went and encouraged that. And so it's giving them, just seeing the people that they're becoming and seeing their insights. And especially as I'm going through all the personal development, it's watching them. They have been listening. And they do watch the things I'm doing, because all of a sudden I'll see Liam, my son will be like, Mom, you really can just put on a smile, or you can take some deep breaths, and he can do that when I'm in a bad state. And so I can see that it's sinking in, and watching who they're becoming is really the joy of being a mom.
Yeah, absolutely. And Michelle, tell me the importance of sort of forming a unified partnership as parents, and how important it is for you to be on a unifying page when you're raising kids as couples and as married couples, or even if you're raising your kids separately, how important it is for parents to be on a unified front when raising children?
Well, I think that comes back down to actually expectations and undefined expectations, because if you don't define them with the spouse or partner or ex person of who they are, you're going to have it in the back of your head, oh, this person, my spouse should have picked them up, or my spouse should be doing this. But if you don't lay that out together, you're going to be fully disappointed with who it is, with what you're doing. And if you don't agree on how you should handle things, and one parent does this, another parent does that, that's where the conflict comes in, is when you don't paint that picture for each other. Don't put out, what are your expectations for how to raise your kids? What do you want from how to do this? How are we going to handle allowance? How are we going to handle when things go wrong? And being proactive about it rather than just reactive, having some of these conversations ahead of time, before the situations happen. Of course, you can't plan for everything because kids are kids and things are going to happen, but you can start that proactive conversation and talking about how you're going to handle different things with them, each other.
Yeah, Michelle, I always say that people make time for the things they prioritize, right?
Exactly. And I really recommend that people prioritize themselves and put their wants into that schedule, because you really do feel different and can be more present with your kids when you are doing those activities with them and doing those things. And the busy time in life, so like say, I always like to give this example, is if you have to do a whole bunch of scheduled things, like you're always in the car and stuff, well, then you use that car time to have those conversations. You can't get to dinner table, do it in the car. Like, make the time where you have it to have these conversations with each other and connect with each other. It doesn't have to be at the dinner table. It doesn't have to be, it has to work with your schedule and how you're doing it, but you need to make the effort and the intention behind it. It's always about the intention.
Yeah, absolutely. And Michelle, my final question for you this morning has to do with your own individual and personal legacy and how you want that to be defined.
Well, my personal legacy, for me, when you, I've never really thought about it, but when you put it to me, that the first thing that popped into my head was seeing people that my kids are becoming. But it's also, that was where I felt like I should be as a mom. But honestly, it's creating this business and creating something for myself as well to pass on and to really give back to the community and the world, and to create something that is going to bring moms together, that will help them and their families as well. Because the more we connect and bring our lights together, the more it's going to pass on. Again, that ripple effect, the ripple effect of kindness and giving. And so I want my legacy to help be building that and setting that ripple effect out of connecting moms together, so it ripples out into other families.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about paying it forward, isn't it?
It really is. And just, I mean, the effect that we get from helping each other, and just how it lights, that's what lights me up. And I know it lights up other people, and just coming together and bringing each other together. And I think that's what it's really about, is just bringing that community back, that village back, the best way we can. And that we are here for each other. And we all, again, back to the inclusion and acceptance, is we are all part of this world, this community together. Let's make it work together.
Absolutely. And Michelle, finally, tell me, if people want to get connected with the great work that you do, what's the best way they can do that?
The best way right now is going to connectingmamas.com. So CONNECTINGMAMAS.com. So Connecting Mamas with an S. And on there, there's a free gift for that check-in process that I told you guys about. So you could just click on from the thing that says free gift, and it will give you a video for each of the letters and a little activity. It should take you about 15 minutes per video, but just a chance to see if it resonates with you, the process resonates with you. There's also a button to hit connect now, and we can have a 30-minute call free, just check in with moms and see where they're at. And there's my course information's on there as well. But come get your free gift and just check in with yourselves. No strings attached. I just want to get the message out there and have people start connecting with themselves closely.
Absolutely. Well, Michelle, I really think that building social capital and connection is a vital part of life. So I want to really commend you for the great work that you do to bring moms closer together and build a sense of community. Your work in the space and time on my behalf is most appreciated this morning, and I want to thank you for being here.
I'm so excited that you invited me, Kevin, and I'm just so happy that I connected with you. And thank you for having me on the show. And I wish everyone more connection. And remember, just start with those conversations. You never know where they're going to leave. Ask one more question. Give someone a compliment. You never know. Let's just start connecting more and listening to each other and hearing each other's stories, because that's really how we really do accept each other.